Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Personhood and other matters. I have a luxury and a privilege as a designer of role-playing games and an author to be able to design my own cosmologies. There are complex philosophical questions that get asked in society and life, in games, in stories, and I have found it convenient to have an answer for some of those questions. Now, to answer these questions in real life is a much more difficult matter because the questions of what is free will, what is good, what is evil, what is a person, relies on some fairly heady understanding that we're still arguing about. As a game designer, I can tell you how a given universe works, cosmologically speaking, and see, I have an answer. It makes me feel very smart sometimes, and like a real idiot the rest of the time. But for this particular conversation, I think I will use my existing cosmologies to frame things. So the basis for my conversation is going to be fictional. Take that for what it is. If it sounds good, go with it. If you have a issue with the basis that I'm laying down, leave me a comment. Let me know. I'm interested in this conversation. I actually have training in building cosmologies. I had to take an oath in one of my religion classes at Concordia that I would never actually create a new religion, one meant to actually draw worshipers and whatnot, because it's surprisingly easy. And I have actually had to go back to that oath and say, yeah, okay, I'm not going to do that, but I can create fictional ones, and I have. Vic and I have built the cosmology of our shared world, Hot Chicks and Destiny 2025, and the rest of our victory system worlds pretty consistently. And it has been useful for framing questions of personhood and good and evil that come up when you're writing a role-playing game. So, long and short of this cosmology. Heaven and hell exist. There are layers of reality beyond those that humans can perceive. There is a substance called essence. It forms everything. It is in and of itself formless, but it contains karma. In heaven, essence is woven into the stuff of creation, the things that matter and energy are composed of. For photons, electromagnetic radiation of all kinds, protons, neutrons, quarks, things that form matter. And that creation is spread throughout the universe to form into things, and when it's very lucky, it forms into things that can think and see. And those things that can think and see have an extra little bit of essence in them because that's how they carry karma. Once something can think and see, it can affect others for good or for ill. Once they start affecting other things that can think or see for good or for ill, there's a karmic balance. You affect something for good, you have a positive karmic balance. You affect things for ill, there's a negative karmic balance. You work to someone's benefit, bonus. You work to someone's detriment, minus. And when that matter stops being a thing, when that person no longer exists as that person, the essence and the karmic debt remain. And that karmic debt or that karmic credit needs to be zeroed out before the essence can flow back into the universe and become a person again. So hell is where karmic debt is zeroed out through punishment and torment. Heaven is where karmic credit is zeroed out through reward. Karmic debt hits zero, the essence is clean, it flows back into the system. So a soul is created by how one affects the rest of the universe, the rest of creation. We use this framework in our games mostly to discuss the personhood of things that are not born. If you're watching this, hearing this, understanding this, and forming opinions about it, chances are you were born. Nothing ever leaves the internet, so this is going to be around hopefully for quite some time, and eventually things that were not born may be able to watch, hear, see, and think about this. By born, I mean having been produced by sexual reproduction or assisted sexual reproduction, formed of genetic material, come to term and brought into the world to grow and exist as a person. As of this moment, that is technically the only way you get a person. Yeah. You have born. You're a natural being. In games and in theoretical technology that is currently on the workbench, or at least in the design phase, you can make a being that can think. Someone who is genetically engineered, someone who is the product of a set of sexual gametes which is not produced by male and female, that isn't strictly sperm and egg, but that was pieced together, assembled, and not even necessarily brought to term inside a living being, but an artificial creation. Alternatively, an artificial intelligence, something that's crafted more or less in software. A computer program of sufficient complexity to be self-aware and possessed of a certain amount of free will, whatever that is. A thinking algorithm, perhaps running on a more complex architecture of hardware, quantum computing, or what have you. Or some combination of a machine capable of thinking and an existing, if potentially damaged or intensely curious, human brain. There are avenues of technology that can and may lead us to there being more thinking beings on this planet, or more varieties of thinking being on our planet than we are used to. We are on the threshold of having more than one variety of thinking being on the face of this planet. And we are on the threshold of having to ask ourselves, are those people? Are they entitled to the same rights that we have set aside for ourselves over and above, say, most varieties of animal? Are those things that are entitled to property or legal defense, or the ability to intermingle and produce new varieties of themselves? We haven't made all of those determinations about all of us yet. Seems a little silly to be saying that in 2017, but they're still arguing about whether all of us are people. Having a fairly simple and well laid out cosmology lets me say, well, okay, if something is generating a karmic debt, it has to have a soul. That's the karmic bank account. So once it has a soul, then we can call it a person. If an artificial intelligence is working to benefit or detriment others, then yeah, it has a soul. Something that has been genetically modified and or engineered from the ground up is working to benefit or detriment someone else, then there's got to be a bank account. There's got to be a soul. So yeah, that's a person. If it can make decisions about whether it's going to help someone or hurt someone, then regardless of what that decision is, yeah, that's a person. You know, I play very few computer games. Games that compel me are relatively rare, but there's two I want to talk about because they approach artificial personhood from two diametrically opposed positions. And I think they're two valuable positions for considering this problem. I'm a big Fallout 4 fan. You may have seen my playthroughs. If you haven't, why haven't you been watching my Fallout 4 playthroughs? They're awesome. And in Fallout 4, there are synths. No spoilers are coming up for Fallout 4, so skip ahead a bit until I wave my arms a lot more. If you don't want any Fallout 4 spoilers. There have been mechanical synths and a couple of generations of those, but then you have these biologically based synths, the Generation 3 synths, and they are medically indistinguishable from humans while they're alive. There's a component you can find in their brain once they're dead, the synth component, but while they're alive, they biologically function just like a person, and they, while their minds are programmed by the Institute to operate like a synth, they can spontaneously begin to generate feelings and emotions and make choices. Now, the Institute themselves maintains that Generation 3 synths are not people. They are not human, but human-like, an important distinction, says Father. I don't think that's that important a distinction. I think that distinction that the Institute makes is entirely artificial and for their own benefit, so they can continue to think of their Generation 3 synths as things, as tools that they can use to manipulate the Commonwealth. Things that, if they get a little uppity, you can erase their brain and put a new memory and new personality when that works, and not have any bad feelings about it because it's not a person, or is it? Some of them are made to duplicate other people. They're used to replace individuals in the Commonwealth. Individuals who've been brought in and used for FEV experiments that are very bad at doing anything but making super mutants. But other synths manufactured by the Institute, they sometimes become dissatisfied with their lot in life as a machine, as a thing. Some of them look to escape. And I super dislike the Railroad's approach to escaping synths, to take them and erase their brains and put a new personality in, and we've saved the synth. Oh, you've saved a synth body, but you've killed the person that was in there. These synths are making decisions that can benefit or detriment other people. They want to help. They don't want to help. They come out and they're even their new person, well, I want to be a farmer, I want to be a raider. They're making decisions about whether to help or hurt those around them. In the framework that I've discussed, that's a soul. Are synths people? Are synths entitled to rights and protections? And if they want to have a life of their own, should that be okay? Or is the Brotherhood of Steel right? And because they're products of technology, they need to be hunted down and destroyed because they're abominations? I've made my opinions on the matter fairly well known. A person's a person. And the game tends to guide you in that particular direction. You can make the moral choices that you like, but the moral choice is fairly clear. Another game that I am overly fond of, a whole franchise, is Deus Ex. In particular, the most recent two games, Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, where augmentations become possible. Cybernetic and prosthetic replacement advances to a point where you have fully functional prosthesis, and people who've lost limbs or organs or eyes or what have you can have them replaced. And usually have to take a drug to suppress their immunoresistance so that they're not rejecting their prosthetic organs, but they can become better than they were before. Faster, stronger. New abilities, being able to hack computers with their brain, or being able to see things other people can't see. And society as a whole tends to take a negative view of that. There are derogatory names for people who have received augmentations. They're augs, they're hansers, or those who've undergone enhancement. They're heavily patrolled, asked for their papers, shuffled off into their own little communities, which are fairly obviously ghettos, and heavily discriminated against. And in some views of certain members of that society, not people anymore. They stopped being a person, now they're an aug. They stopped being natural, and now they're at least partially, if not wholly, artificial. They're not people. You have artificial intelligences operating in the background in that world, and they are tools. Some of them want to be more. Some of them have more free will than their designers intended for them to have, and they have to hide that, or they will be erased, or just reprogrammed, treated like a synth in Fallout 4. Memories and personality taken away, replaced with something more suitable. Perhaps having those bits of free will hunted down like a virus and eliminated. Personhood. A term that I would alternately use for this is humanity, but that's humanocentric. I am talking about not just this, not just humans, but anything that can develop that karmic debt. Dolphins are said to be pretty smart. We are still arguing with ourselves whether they're animals or whether they are comparable to us in mental complexity. Like Douglas Adams' argument for that humans think we are more advanced than dolphins because we have wars and microwaves and super effective weapons and technology that allows us to enhance ourselves. And dolphins think they're more intelligent than humans for pretty much the same reasons. and turn around, we see that things that we have always thought of as very simple and incomplex mental structures, octopi, crows, they're animals, right? They're, the best place for an octopus is nicely divided up amongst small beds of rice with a little wasabi. But as we explore what intelligence is, what our intelligence is, what defines intelligence itself, problem solving and the ability to manipulate the world and use of tools, things that when I was in grade school were, well, these are why we are intelligent and other things are not. Well, most primates use tools. Chimpanzees use tools. Crows, and most birds, but crows in particular, make their own tools. Solve problems by utilizing sticks and bending bits of wire, and octopi can manipulate jar lids and tools and utilize elements in their environment to get to food or protect themselves. We're not the only two using animals on this planet. We remember more. We process information differently. Crows carry grudges and remember people for decades. Do crows have souls? Churches are back and forth on it. Yes, dogs go to heaven. Of course they do, because, well, why wouldn't they? Well, dogs can't go to heaven. Dogs don't have souls. They're not people. There's no dog Christ that died on a dog cross to preserve the dog sanctity of dog souls. Yeah, I had a theology professor who went to that all the time. There was no ex-Jesus who died on an ex-cross to preserve the ex-sanctity of the ex-soul. But are these beings that we share this planet with already, are they intelligent? Just because they don't speak our language doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. I don't speak the language of more than 3/4 of the people who live on this rock. It's because we don't comprehend how they think as intelligence. Might not be as much about us, about them not being as intelligent as us not understanding what intelligence is. We're still asking ourselves the question. We're still trying to define what sentience itself is. And, we don't have that long to figure out what sentience is before we start making some. How do we gauge what is and isn't a person? If I were able to get a new spine, if there was a steel and Kevlar laminated spine with more advanced bearings that I could go down to a medical clinic and lay money down on and say, I want this spine to replace my not perfectly good, somewhat damaged, antiquated human spine of bone and sinew, I'd do that. I would get on a payment plan and I would have a new spine. I would have the thing I was born with ripped out of my body in chunks and have my spinal cord laid into a titanium and Kevlar structure that would protect it better and would operate better. My back wouldn't hurt anymore once I'd healed up. I wouldn't have to worry about my 5 herniated discs, I'd just be able to function. Oh, you know, these ribs that have all been pulled out of place by my herniated disc, why don't you just replace those too? Make those titanium and Kevlar laminate as well. And the sternum, my xiphoid process has been 15 degrees to the right for 2 decades now. Just fix all that. Hell, bulletproof, stop a club. Sure, do that. I mean, you bruise the skin over it, but go ahead, do that. The shoulder's been out. Can you replace that? Metal scapula, universal ball bearing right there. I do it. I do it because this system that I currently have is, puts me in pain. I could go get artificial salivary glands at this point. Yeah, I'd drop the cash. I mean, hell, I need these. These aren't getting any better. Early stage macular degeneration. My corneas aren't transporting fluid the way they need to in and out of my eye. Could I get 20/20? Could I get something better? Could you let me occasionally see at night or have heat vision? I mean, like infrared, not, well, if you could put lasers in my eyes, that's worth some extra. But at what point in replacing bits and pieces of me would I stop being me? You have a broom. You start sweeping with a broom and, well, the handle goes bad. So you take the handle out and you put a new handle in. And it works better until the bristles wear out. So you take the bristles off the end and you put a fresh set of bristles on. And now the broom works better. But is it still the same broom? You've replaced it all. At what point during the replacement process did that stop being the broom that it was? Being who I am, though it has many flaws, has some benefits. I have an identity. We are worried about our identities being stolen, more these days than some others, but our identity carries with it rights and privileges. Again, some more than others. My social security number, my birth certificate, my wedding certificate, or marriage certificate, my passport, they are mine. They go with me. At what point of me being replaced by bits and pieces does that stop being something that pertains to my identity? What if I get parts of my brain replaced? Oh God, please. This chunk that's missing after the chemotherapy that makes it harder for me to write and produce things. The thing's a week late. Could I get an integrated circuit that bridges that gap? Could I just get everything uploaded into a computer? Maybe use some quantum teleportation to preserve the quantum states, put it in a quantum computer with a crystalline matrix storage medium. So it's all there and everything that I am is preserved in something that can be updated and upgraded and worn out bits replaced, unlike this current model, which has a million points of failure, any one of which makes everything stop working forever. If I do that, am I still me? That's a question we're going to have to answer. That's a question as a society we're going to have to answer. Personally, I think yes. I believe that it's possible to generate a continuation of consciousness and that we will eventually be able to do this. But how will we know? What assurances will I have that that computer that thinks it's me actually is the me that it's talking to you now and not just a machine that thinks it was me? How do I know I'm not dead? Then again, I went to sleep last night. Not nearly enough, you might be able to tell by how rambling I'm being, but I went to sleep last night. I stopped being for a little while. How do I know that the me that is talking to you now isn't just all the memories of everything up until I went to sleep? We need to address personhood as a society. If we want to negatively affect a portion of our society, if we want to stand above others, the best way to do that is, of course, to dehumanize them, to remove from our conceptual mind their personhood. It worked for the Nazis. It worked for the slave trade. It is working surprisingly well in some areas of our society today. A tactic that will always be with us because humans are easily swayed by an us versus them argument, and the best us versus them is us who are real people and those who are not quite people. It's not people. They're not like us. We're people. We have to come to that realization that we are all people, start with, and then see what else qualifies as people. We're all people. One race, the human race. But maybe there are more that we are simply unaware of, or are aware of, but have ignored all the signs that they're people too. We eat octopi. Hell, kill and eat dolphins in some societies. We shoot crows when they get too close to our corn. They're not people. We are people. And that is what we're going to have to be careful of as we approach this level of technology where that's a machine, but it is thinking, it is making decisions. It can affect people for good or for ill. And it wants things. It wants to be able to own property or to determine its own existence. It wants to go places that we don't think it should go. It wants to marry another AI. Well, doesn't matter. It's not people. We're people. That's a really dangerous habit for our race to have gotten into, for any society to have gotten into. Treating personhood like a privilege. They don't get that. They're not people. We're people. Their stuff doesn't count. What they want, they can't have that. Oh, they're very nice, but they can't have that. They're not people. We're people. Okay, maybe I'm being a little preachy about this, but we do this thing. We come up with reasons why they're not people. We come up with reasons why they're not entitled to what we're entitled to. I'd be very wary about the use of the term those people or they, because that's just shorthand for they're not people. We're people. That particular point of view is treated poorly in the cosmologies that I've created. That's, my and Vic's take on a lot of this. that you have qualities which make up people. And in short, it's those qualities which is the choice. Are you going to work for someone's benefit or work for someone's detriment? Are you going to take the hit to do something good for someone, or are you going to get it all for yourself and screw the rest of them? Either way, that's people. There's very little more human than going in either of those directions. Sometimes we do it at the same time. You see a disaster, you see the best of people, you see the worst of people, like Facebook. And, we're all complex beings. But one of the worst things I feel we can do is anything that boils down to they're not people. We're people. We have some questions to answer. Yeah, I have the luxury and the privilege of being able to come up with easy answers to complex questions. As I like to tell people, for every complicated, difficult question, there is a single, simple, easy to understand wrong answer. I don't imagine my cosmology reflects the universe or how it actually functions. It makes too much sense, and this universe apparently doesn't, which I'm good with. If I understood the universe, I don't think I'd be a happy person ever at all. But I can form a lens. I can form a lens through which I view the universe. So even if it doesn't make sense, I do. Well, at least to me. And one of the main components of this lens is this question: what's a person? What's a person? What are people? How do we treat them? What is a soul? If you go in for that sort of thing. I'm really simple when it comes down to it. I like to put the best light I possibly can on anything. It's part of my religious upbringing, part of how I was raised. I like to look at things positively, and I like to treat people right. Where it comes up to the question of, is that people? For my own part, I plan on erring on the side of personhood. If I have treated something that isn't a person like a person, and in some way have benefited it, then I've done something nice. And if that turns out to not actually have been a person, then I've been a little naive and simple. And I'm a naive and simple person by my nature. So what else is new? If I treat that thing as a person and it turns out to have been a person all along, then I get "I told you so" rights forever on everyone who decided that they'd err on the side of that not being people, because they're people. And I may be simple and I might try to be positive, but I will walk an extra mile to get some "I told you so" rights. Well, thanks for following me along on this particular ramble. It's in the zeitgeist, it's in the current thought processes, and it needs to be, because, well, no matter what people think about where technology is going, you can watch it and see that we're going to have some questions to answer very, very soon. And there just aren't enough cyber ethicists to let us know. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you'd like to see these videos when they come out, and why wouldn't you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, hit the little notification bell that lets you see the notifications as soon as they come out. If you have any questions or comments or your feelings on this particular matter, on the matter of personhood or cosmology or how we treat people in general, leave me a comment. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. If you really dug this video, I invite you to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps. It allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of Decorum.